I'm Rolene Marks. Welcome to Modiin and Beyond. Join me every Sunday between 3 and 4 on Radio Modiin as we take a look at what's happening in Modiin, Israel, and beyond. Boker Tov, I'm Rolene Marks. This is Modiin and Beyond, where you guys join me every Tuesday morning between 10 and 11, right here on radiomodiin.co.il, where we take a look at what's happening in our beautiful city, in our magnificent country, and beyond our borders. And just a reminder, if you want to advertise on Modiin and Beyond or Radio Modiin, please be in touch with us via our website at www.radiomodiin.co.il. And guys, thanks for all the comments that are coming in from previous shows. I know you enjoyed our chat the other day with Adam Levick and David Lang and Michael Dixon. We'll check in on them in a couple of weeks as well. But today we have two very, very important guests. I'm so thrilled to be joined in studio by Aryeh Myers. He's a paramedic and from the International Relations Department with Magen David Adom. And afterwards, I'll be crossing back to South Africa. Last week, we spoke a little bit about the bizarre stance that the government has taken against Israel, siding with Hamas, siding with Iran, what the consequences are there. So we're going to be speaking to Howard Feldman. But joining me in studio, Aryeh Myers. Welcome to Modiin and Beyond.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having me here.
Now, I think you're probably one of the busiest people in the country at the moment, being not just a paramedic on the front lines with Magen David Adom, but also a spokesperson in the international arena, making the case for Israel around the world. But let's go back to the 7th of October. I think it's a day that has changed us all forever. I don't think we'll ever go back to being those same people who went to sleep on the 6th of October. Can you walk us through that day? What was that like for you?
So obviously in Israel, Friday night was Simchat Torah. All of our shuls, all of our synagogues were filled with people dancing, singing, enjoying the festivities. Overseas, it was the first day of a 2-day festival. But here we'd already been dancing in shul. And 6:30 in the morning, my phone starts buzzing. Now, as a first responder with Magen David Adom, I'm used to my phone buzzing even on Shabbat. I've got it with me 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and sometimes there are calls in the near vicinity. So I'm used to it buzzing once, and maybe there's a call. Maybe I'll go out on the call, go and help before the ambulance crew arrives. But it buzzed nonstop.
Yeah.
And rocket attack after rocket attack after rocket attack. It was nonstop. For the first 15 minutes, we thought this was just a large barrage of rockets. We know these happen from time to time. There are skirmishes from time to time between Israel and Hamas. But very quickly, this became obvious that this was something extraordinary. This was something much bigger than just a rocket attack. When we started receiving reports from our volunteers, from our staff in the south, who started reporting one of the horrifying calls that I've heard the recording of was the ambulance driver, ambulance number 1367, calling up the Lachish dispatch and saying, there are terrorists in Sderot, there are terrorists in Sderot. And he'd just been shot at.
I can't imagine what it is like to receive those calls, because we were watching with horror and anxiety and also seeing the footage of Hamas terrorists shooting RPGs at ambulances, trying to prevent them getting to where they needed to be. But as a first responder on the ground, knowing that time is critical, not only just to save lives, but also your colleagues are out there under tremendous fire. I can't wrap my head around what that must have been like.
So the fact that not only our ambulances came under attack. I mean, I don't know if you've seen the video, but there's a video, one of the GoPros from one of the terrorists who walked into Be'eri, and one of the first things you see is they walk up to the hut where the community ambulance, the Magen David Adom ambulance, is stationed, and they take shots directly at the ambulance to ensure that any response that might come now can't. It's completely unprecedented, certainly in my memory, and I've been doing this job for over 20 years, where ambulance crews are targeted directly in this way. And like I said, we lost 3 members of our staff on the first day. One, a paramedic who was treating people in a makeshift clinic in Be'eri, and she held out there for several hours until terrorists broke into the clinic, and she was killed.
Her name was Amit, right?
Amit Man, nachon. And another one who was directly shot at in the ambulance, who was killed. Another one who was shot at in the ambulance was injured. Again, coming under direct attack. And we hear all these calls for the Red Cross, and again, we're Israel's Red Cross society. For the Red Cross is not a target, but in those hours on that day, Magen David Adom was very much a target, because the way that the terrorists looked at it was that not only are they out to kill as many people as they can in the most horrendous ways, but we're also going to prevent anybody being able to come and help them. What I think they didn't build on or didn't rely on was the determination of our volunteers, of our staff, finding any possible way to do it. It meant that within a very, very short period of time, once we understood the scale of the incident, that our Director General, Eli Bean, ordered all of the bulletproof ambulances that we have in central Israel, in Judea and Samaria, ordered all of those bulletproof ambulances to head down to the south, because again, we understood that we're going to need those to get to the casualties, to get to them, to treat them, and then to evacuate them to the hospitals. We built a system very, very quickly, realizing that the hospitals were about to be overwhelmed. Soroka and Barzilai hospitals, which are the 2 nearest hospitals in the area, were very quickly inundated with huge numbers of casualties. So we operated a system that transferred the patients from those hospitals to hospitals slightly further away into central Israel, to allow them to be able to cope. And these were all missions that were undertaken by Magen David Adom in order to try to save lives, to preserve lives, and as much as we possibly could.
And by the end of the day, Israel effectively was in a state of war. Our Prime Minister had declared war. And since the 7th of October, we have seen, again, massive barrages of rocket attacks still coming in, creating a lot of trauma on the ground. Yesterday, we also had a terrorist attack in Jerusalem. So you are seeing this massive influx of attacks and potential casualties. Talk us through the process of responding when there are rocket attacks coming.
So I can give you an example from my personal experience. That the night of the 7th of October, I went down into the south, and I did a shift in Ashkelon, which is just a few kilometers outside of the Gaza Strip. It's one of the biggest cities that gets hit by the most rockets. And we were dispatched to a call to a building that was hit in a direct rocket strike, to a family of 4 people, 2 parents, two kids, 4 and 2, if I remember right, little kids. And while we were en route to that call, we came under fire, and we had to stop. And it's a bizarre sort of existence, reality, you can call it whatever you want, that as we were driving to the call, we kept looking out for where the nearest shelter is, so that we would know if we had to stop, where we could stop and seek shelter. And twice on the way to that call, we had to seek shelter. We then had to take into account that we have 4 casualties. Under normal circumstances, we would never take 4 casualties in one ambulance. It's not safe. It's you want to be able to treat everyone. Yeah. So we'll take 1, we'll take 2. That's usually what we're limited to. But we had a family of 4. There weren't enough ambulances for the number of calls that were coming in. Normally, Magen David Adom will take about 5,000 to 6,000 calls within a 24-hour period. On that day, we took 20,000 calls.
Wow.
And it meant that, again, our crews were under fire, directly under fire. Whether they were being shot at by terrorists in Sderot, whether it was ambulances on their way to calls, like I had on the way to the call, where there was a red alert siren, we had to seek shelter. And we had to find the way to work through that. And one of the most remarkable things, I've only done 1 shift down in the south. The most amazing thing is to see the staff that work there full time. and they're going from shift to shift to shift, from call to call, from red alert to red alert, and they keep doing it. And on the 7th of October, we had makeshift clinics in a paramedic's house in Sderot. Like we said, with Amit, who opened up this clinic in Kibbutz Be'eri. And this happened all over the place. People responded in the best way they could, despite the fact that they were themselves very much under threat, under constant rocket fire. And Magen David Adom was there.
Now, you are our physical first responders, but what happens when the physical first responders need some emotional first response? Because the scenes that you are dealing with are, anyway, we're hearing the testimony beyond what the human mind can comprehend. How do you deal with your emotions, your mental health?
So I'm actually going to take a step back from the frontline paramedics and EMTs, and I want to mention that the people who first met this trauma were actually our call takers and our dispatchers in the 101 emergency call center. And the calls that they received were harrowing, absolutely harrowing. I mean, nobody can teach a dispatcher how to direct an 8-year-old to hide his sister in a cupboard and what to do, and they can hear the gunshots in the background. Nobody teaches how to. It's not a scenario we ever had considered of how do we guide somebody to safety while we can hear the gunshots in the background, while we can hear the rocket fire in the background, while we can hear the terrorists literally surrounding a house and people screaming for help. The dispatchers on that day did an unbelievable job, and I think they're going to need as much support as the frontline people who saw what they saw. We debrief amongst ourselves. We debrief. We have a system in place in each region. Magen David Adom is divided. We're a national organization. We're divided into different regions, and each region has somebody who's responsible for the mental health needs of the staff. And those who will need support will get that support. It's part of what Magen David Adom is there for. And there's different ways of dealing with it. Each person deals with it in their own way. Some people write, some people run, play music, try to step away, just spending time with family as much as we possibly can, even through this insane reality.
It is an insane reality, and it's something that we in Israel are living with day to day. And I know that you are doing the rounds in the international media in a different way to maybe the way I am, because I deal with the political questions. What have you found the response like from international media speaking to you, trying to understand the reality on the ground that day and through this war?
So from a Magen David Adom point of view, there's several levels. Number one, you have to understand that Magen David Adom is government mandated, but not government funded.
Okay.
So since 1950, MDA has existed since 1930. Since 1950, by law, we've been the national EMS and blood services organization. Nevertheless, we don't get actual government funding. So what we've had to now work very, very hard at is to get funding to replace the ambulances that have been damaged and destroyed, to replace the huge amount of equipment that has had to be used, to source that sort of equipment. So there's that side of it, the logistical side of preparing for what may come next, for being able to continue providing the service to the people of Israel. And there's also to get the story out there. And the realities that we've seen, I'm sure you've seen, for example, Gilad Erdan, who's been doing an incredible job in the United Nations. The first-hand accounts of what our EMTs, what our paramedics, what our first responders saw on the 7th, and since then, it's something that's incredibly important to get out to the general public so they understand what it is, so that they to try to give some sort of an image of what it is that the state of Israel is going through. And that's our role, that's our job. We obviously look forward to better days, but we also have to prepare for what may come. Obviously, we're looking up sort of to the north now as well, with concerns of what happened or what might happen with Hezbollah. We can see that border is very, very unstable, and something that Magen David Adom has to be prepared for. And again, despite the fact that nobody was kind of ready for what actually happened, we had the infrastructure in place that allowed us to deal with it.
I'm a big believer, as painful as it is and as traumatic as it is, that we need to bear witness. We need to bear witness. We are the generation recording history and bearing witness and telling our story for future generations. We said never again, and never again is now. I think you are doing just. The nation owes you a debt of gratitude that we can never repay you. You are our first responders. You put yourselves on the line. You risk your lives for us every single day. And now it is our turn to help you. How can we, the citizens of this country and the people listening around the world, how can we help Magen David Adom?
So, first of all, those of you living in Israel, continue following the instructions of the Home Front Command. The more people that follow those instructions, take shelter when they need to within the time that's available, depending where you are in Israel, following those instructions is life-saving.
Yeah.
Right? People taking shelter when they're supposed to take shelter is life-saving. That's number one. So take care of yourselves, and hopefully you won't have the need for us to come and help again. That's the first thing. From a physical point of view, but those who want to come and help us, we've had volunteers who've come in, volunteer paramedics from organizations in the States who have come out and doing shifts on ambulances. From a funding point of view, anybody who wants to help us, search for Magen David Adom online. In Israel, it's mdais.org. And if you want to help donate to Magen David Adom, that will obviously also help us prepare for the future, restock our supplies, and prepare for what may come so we can continue being Israel's national EMS organization. People have been donating blood in huge numbers, where we used to collecting 1,000-ish blood units every day. That number has gone up by almost 500% over the last 3 weeks.
Incredible.
Which is unbelievable. Again, our blood services staff have done an amazing job. We've had blood drives throughout all hours of the day, all across the country. And the state of Israel is very good at arguing with itself. And people are very good at arguing with each other. And there's been a lot of sort of animosity between 2 or 3 or 4 different sides of society. But in a crisis, we're very good at coming together. And it's been an incredible thing to see. We're seeing it inside the state of Israel, and we're seeing it from outside of Israel as well. We're seeing a lot of support from people we wouldn't have expected to receive that support, whether it's financial, whether it's a show of solidarity, whether it's from governments, whatever it is. We're seeing that today, and Magen David Adom will continue to be here for the people of Israel for as long as you need us. That's what we're all about.
Well, you're welcome here anytime. Aryeh Myers, paramedic, and from the International Relations Department of Magen David Adom. I know you've got another interview to get to. Go out there, and just, I think, from all of us to all of you, thank you every single day.
Thank you very much
for all the work you do. I'm Rolene Marks. He's brought tears to my eyes. We're going to take a short music break. After this, I cross to Howard Feldman in Johannesburg. Oi, Aryeh.
כשהלב בוכה, רק אלוקים שומע, הכאב עולה מתוך הנשמה, אדם נופל לפני שהוא שוקע, בתפילה קטנה חותכת הדממה, שמע ישראל אלוקיי, אתה כל יכול, נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל, בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, עכשיו אני לבד, חזק אותי אלוקיי. עושה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ולאן לברוח, עושה שיגמר כי לא נותר בי כוח. כשהלב בוחר, הזמן עומד מלכת, האדם רואה את כל חייו פתאום. אל הלא נודע הוא לא רוצה ללכת, לאלוקיו קורא על סף תהום. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, אתה כל יכול, נתת לי את חיי, נתת לי הכל. בעיניי דמעה, הלב בוכה בשקט, וכשהלב שותק, הנשמה זועקת. שמע ישראל אלוקיי, עכשיו אני לבד, חזק אותי אלוקיי, עשה שלא אבחר. הכאב גדול ואין לאן לברוח, עשה שיגמר כי לא נותר בי כוח.
I'm Rolene Marks. This is Modiin and Beyond on Radio Modiin. A very, very emotional interview with Aryeh Myers from Magen David Adom. I know that it's not hard to cry these days, but when you hear the extraordinary stories from the front line, I think we need to do everything we can to hold our first responders, to support them as much as we possibly can. Now, Modiin and Beyond, sometimes we like to go outside of our borders, and now we go to a good friend of the show, Howard Feldman, writer, broadcaster, and best-selling author in Johannesburg. Howard, it's almost like I haven't spoken to you already today.
Yeah, it's been a few hours now that we haven't spoken. How are you, Rolene? Sounds like a challenging day.
It has been a challenge. You and I keep saying that it's moment to moment here in Israel. And when you and I chatted this morning on your show, I was super feisty. Now I'm super cryy because I don't think many people realize, and Aryeh just mentioned it, that the call dispatchers on the 7th of October, they were the ones trying to, handle these calls. And he actually said to me, he said, how do you as a dispatcher direct an 8-year-old to go hide in the cupboard from a terrorist coming to shoot you? It's just, when you and I talk about the importance of bearing witness, these are the stories we're talking about. but the whole world, Howard, has well, certainly world leaders have shown solidarity with Israel. We've had an almost endless parade of world leaders: President Biden, Prime Minister Sunak, Chancellor Scholz, the Austrian Chancellor, the Romanian, Czech, Italy, all coming to Israel to show incredible solidarity. And I do believe that beyond what we're seeing in the streets of many countries, there are many people who understand the horror that we are fighting in the form of Hamas, except South Africa. Howard, please explain to me what is going on in South Africa.
So I think what we have to do, Rolene, is absolutely distinguish South Africans from the ANC government, because in fact, I'm busy writing an article for the Jewish Report this week, where I'm actually saying that I think we've got the worst anti-Semites in the world here. And like, I don't want to encourage anybody. It's not a call to action, obviously, but the reality is that South Africans, I think there are a couple of reasons for it. I think South Africans have real issues. We are on the brink of very much a failed state. We have electricity issues, water issues, infrastructure issues. The economy is in a terrible, terrible place. We've got an election coming up next year, an early part of next year, where for the first time since we became a democracy, there's a good chance that the ANC will be removed. So that means that South Africans inherently are very focused on their immediate needs, and their immediate needs are not being met. So it's fine to have a diversion in terms of what's going on many, many thousands of kilometers away. And I'm not saying that it isn't important for people, but the reality is it's not on the same level, because we don't have the same luxury that many people around the world have. So if you look at, for example, if we compare this past Saturday with what happened in London versus what happened here in Johannesburg. In Johannesburg, we had a pro-Palestinian cavalcade march, and everybody was very anxious about it. I was told by some of the security people, maybe stay home, which of course is the first encouragement for me not to, but that is an aside. They had this cavalcade, and people were really worried because they were going to a building in Johannesburg where that houses a lot of the Jewish organizations, but including Zionist federations and places like that. The reality is there were a lot of people. I mean, not in massive numbers. There were over, let's say, 1,000 people, if some of the varying reports are to be agreed on. But they went there. They were right by about probably 10 or 15 shuls, but they didn't go there. They didn't harass Jews. They kept it within the framework of what it was. And then they went home, probably to watch the rugby, because it was Saturday night and it was going to be a big event. But the reality is that yes, there was the chanting of "from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free," of Jews, but it's not with the same venom. And I think that's important. Now, I'm not saying that it maybe isn't a bit different in Cape Town, where you've got a bit of a different type of population demographic. But in Johannesburg, you really don't get the sense that there is a anti-Semitism problem on the streets. So I think it's important, and South Africans, both Jews and Muslims, have always got on incredibly, incredibly well, working with each other. It's just never really been that much of an issue. When now you move it to a government perspective, and we've got an ANC that has aligned itself and unfortunately allowed its own history to be annexed. So they were quite quick to give away the apartheid word. And that is a problem because that's very confusing for South Africans. So South Africans are being told over and over again that Israel's an apartheid state. Our government says it is. Our Department of International Relations say it is. But what does that even mean? Does that mean black people are discriminated against? Black South Africans actually sometimes genuinely think so. And when they find out that it's really quite a metaphoric stretch, they are quite shocked by it. So our government is appalling. There's no other word for it. They are a failure in every aspect of their own leadership. And maybe it's easier to focus further afield. We do know that Naledi Pandor, who is our minister in charge of international relations, she is a convert to Islam, and I'm not suggesting that is the reason. And that Islam in of itself is a problem. I'm not suggesting that, but it definitely does frame her view. Now we know she's been off to Iran to visit them. We know she made a call to Hamas. We know that
Did she ask for the hostages? Did she ask to free the hostages?
Well, she hasn't said she did, so we have to presume she didn't. And that's a huge problem, because if she does have this relationship, even though it's an appalling and scary one, well, then surely she would use. She didn't even ask them to free the South African hostages, from what we understand.
From what I understand, the South African families that have lost loved ones in the Hamas terror attack also haven't received a call.
I'm sure not. I would be shocked if they did, because when she defended her call to Hamas, she said no, she called them just not to validate the attack. She doesn't call it a terror attack, obviously, but to offer humanitarian support for Gaza now, or whatever it was. It's a bit convoluted. Why doesn't she phone the Israeli embassy? She didn't. It's unequivocal that she did not. They also put out a statement yesterday, which was one of the most appalling statements I've seen, asking for a ceasefire, but using unsubstantiated information. A family in Pretoria lost 30 members, and a family, we spoke to, lost 25 members in Gaza, and taking a very personal swipe at Zev Krengel. Appalling from a government office. They have subsequently, I tweeted out this morning, and about an hour later, it in fact has been removed from their website. You can't see it now. So I would imagine that even the ANC, who is very clearly not a friend of the Jews anymore, or friend of Israel, even they are a little bit embarrassed by how unprofessional the department is coming across.
What I find quite extraordinary is that in the statement they kind of fancy themselves brokers or peacemakers in the region. But, from where we sit, not only as Jews, and you wrote a magnificent piece in the weekend's Jerusalem Post saying that, has the South African government failed its Jewish community. But from where we sit, when you speak to now our mortal enemy, Hamas, who is funded by Tehran, and there is Naledi Pandor, smiling away, meeting with the Ayatollah, but you think yourself a peacemaker in the region when you've completely negated one side. How on earth does she explain that? And wouldn't other countries be very, very concerned at South Africa's aligning themselves with pariah states, with rogue states?
So I'm pretty sure that they are. Unfortunately for South Africa, they've completely lost credibility. They have no credibility at all internationally, it would seem, and they have to not have any because of their alignment with rogue with problematic states, people like Iran, who are human rights abusers and sponsors of terrorism to the greatest extent. So unfortunately, they have. If we take a look back at the history of the ANC, and it really is a phenomenal and glorious history. Nelson Mandela was involved with assisting the British government in getting the Lockerbie bombers removed from Libya and sent to the UK for a trial. That was his, and he was friend to everybody. So we might not have liked the fact that he was friends to Yasser Arafat, but at the same time, he was a tremendous friend to Israel and the Jewish community. That was his brand. And his brand was one of authenticity. You could agree with him, not agree with him on certain things, but he was authentic and he was an inherent peacemaker. And that gave him global credibility, which unfortunately our local government doesn't have to any extent.
Howard, how does it feel to be a Jew in South Africa these days?
So it's a very difficult question because of my role, I feel very responsible as a Jew in South Africa. So I feel responsible for the many thousands of Jews in terms of the voice that I have. I feel very, very sad and disappointed that I need to be in this role of standing up to government, of writing articles, of being abused on social media day in and day out. It saddens me. It doesn't particularly bother me because I'm up in a German household, so I confuse criticism with love. It's a thing. So I'm quite well suited to Twitter. But the reality is that
imagine you were sensitive.
Imagine if I was sensitive. But it's very disappointing. It is very disappointing. And the Jewish community have been sent a very clear message, guys, that you're on your own as far as the South African government is concerned. In a way, it's quite good because that was probably the reality. We just didn't recognize it. But now the lines are very, very clear. The community is very unified. But we are also obviously quite vulnerable to the irrational decisions of a Hamas-supporting crew.
It boggles the mind. I mean, surely this is going to have an impact on South Africa's AGOA deal with the United States, their stance. I mean, you've got one of the most progressive, if not the most progressive constitution in the world, which protects you as a minority. But, looking from the outside and as somebody who grew up in South Africa, it's just absolutely mind-boggling. Do you think this will affect the AGOA deal?
So I have been concerned about it, but I just see a recent, if we can believe BBC, I actually can't believe I'm quoting BBC and feeling uncomfortable about it. It's like I'm quoting the neighborhood gossip. But there was an article just a few moments ago, in fact, while I was waiting to chat to you, that listed a few countries that might lose their AGOA status. South Africa wasn't listed. So I am pleased about that. But because it will impact greatly on the livelihood of South Africans if it is impacted. But at the same time, part of me feels, well, the government should actually pay a price for their horrific behavior. And it's not only, of course, about Israel and Hamas, but also Russia, Ukraine, where they have walked a very, very fine line, but really supported Russia throughout this.
Unbelievable. Now, if our listeners and viewers want to find you online, how do we do that?
Well, they can follow me on Twitter at Howard Feldman, or they can go to Facebook and just follow me there. I think that's probably the best thing to do. And they'll see my articles in Jewish Report, Jerusalem Post, News 24, and follow from there.
Thank you to Howard Feldman, writer, broadcaster, and best-selling author. Now, that's going to be it for me for today. But before I go, I just want to remind all of you, because I know that we're looking at events around the world. We in Israel are deeply, deeply in grief, but we're also very, very united. We know our task moving forward, which is to win this war, to stand 100% behind our soldiers, our armed forces, as they go out to defend us on land, sea, air, and dare I say as well, airwaves. And it's just a reminder to you guys out there, remember on whose shoulders we stand. We are the descendants of great kings and prophets. We are the link in a chain that's thousands of years old. We are warriors. We have endured far worse than this, and we're still standing. And we're not only going to be still standing, we're going to be stronger than ever before. Am Yisrael Chai, B'yachad Nenatzeach. I'm Rolene Marks. This was Modiin and Beyond.
Give up forever to touch you, 'cause I know that you feel me somehow. You're the closest to heaven that I'll ever be, and I don't wanna go home right now. And all I could taste is this moment, and all I can breathe is your light. Sooner or later it's over. I just don't want to miss you tonight. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think that they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want you to know who I am. Tears that ain't coming, all the moment of truth in your lies. When everything feels like the movies, yeah, you bleed just to know you're alive. And I don't want the world to see me, 'cause I don't think they'd understand. When everything's made to be broken, I just want